So we got something we're going to reveal today for the first time. We're going to show some footage today from Rudy Giuliani from Mafia States of America on what was said about Mario Cuomo. And you reached out to the Cuomo camp to see if Andrew Cuomo had anything to say about that.
Multiple times.
They did not want to respond.
It turns out he had some other things
to deal with.
To
extracurricular activities. Yes. But, we won't go there. So, Michael, first of all, why don't we go and talk about the sit down with you and Sammy, okay? Mm-hmm. We talked about this for a while. It was going to happen. It wasn't going to happen. Sammy didn't want to do it. You didn't want to do it. And then you guys spoke, and it's like, let's see if we can do it. And then we had a few calls together. What got you to a point to finally want to do this? I'm sure millions of people have been asking about when is this going to happen, but what made you say, you know what, let's do this sit down?
First of all, a lot of people wanted it, it seemed. I would get it. For some reason, it was, even before the thought was even, moving around to sit with him, people were saying, what's your feeling about Sammy? Do you ever going to sit down with him? Was he the real deal? And what do you think about the murder? I mean, I got so many Sammy questions. So, I was sitting with my wife, and I said, maybe I'll talk to Sammy, and we'll see if we can put this together. And that's really how it happened.
And then when we did it, you guys, you brought your camp.
Yeah.
He brought his camp. You guys were in two different, properties. We had you on this side. We had Sammy on this side. And the whole thing starts. How'd you think it went? I mean, first of all, we have how many hours of footage? We have
including the drone footage, we've got 26 hours.
26 hours of footage, of which, let's be honest, 70% is Sammy.
I was going to say 24 hours with Sammy talking.
But how did you think it went?
Look, I'm glad it happened. There's so much nonsense going on in the internet right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, guys are just coming out of the woodwork, A lot of them I never even heard of before. But look, there was Sammy and I were really a part of that life on the level that we were on. He was the underboss. I was a capo at that time. And even though things, Sammy did what he did, I did what I did, there's still a certain amount of respect there. It's just, you just feel it inside, Even though we both are out of the life, he disagrees on that for some reason. He still thinks he's Cosa Nostra. I said, you want to walk down the streets of Brooklyn with me and let's see how Cosa Nostra you are? But
why? What would happen if you walked down the streets of Brooklyn?
Well, I'll leave that up to you to think about.
Strike that question from the
change. Some guy from Iowa named Todd with neck tattoos who tried to serve him a milk latte.
Okay.
But I can't explain it. There's still, speaking to him, there's a certain amount of respect that I feel, and I think he felt the same for me. So that came out, and these sit downs, it's amazing, Patrick. You can be away from the life for me now, 20 some odd years. But sometimes I'll get off a plane in New York and the feeling comes right back. It's like I never left. And when I sat down with Sammy, I almost felt the same way. We were at a sit down, and there's a level of respect that you have for one another, regardless of what either one of us did. And I think it came out during that. I mean, he got a little testy. We both got a little testy at some point. And, I had to remind him he's not the underboss anymore, just calm down. And he said some things to me. And we both said some things, at different times about each other that weren't, very nice. But I think all in all, it went pretty well.
Yeah, I showed, obviously there's a lot of different sections to the interview, but there was a part when I showed a clip with you and Mike Tyson where I asked Sammy, I said, Sammy, I want to show you video with what Michael said about you on Mike Tyson, just to see what reaction would be. And it was a clip of you saying Sammy had, Napoleon Syndrome, right?
Yeah. Napoleon complex.
Gotti on his best day.
Napoleon
on his worst day was better.
Gotti on his worst day was better than Sammy on his best day. And how much has that changed from that comment being made on Tyson to now after having that 2.5 days we spent with Sammy?
Well, you got to understand something. Prior to me sitting down with Sammy, I spent a lot of time with my dad. And the talk about Sammy, you got to be honest, was not good. From guys, especially guys like my father, who would never say a word about anybody. He'd rather die, 100 deaths than say a word about anybody. So to guys like my father, Sammy was a bad guy. That's
Why
it.
though? Why?
Because of what he did with John. I mean, look, testified against Gotti, testified against a whole bunch of guys. So the word on the street with respect to that was no good with Sammy, and especially from my dad. And he didn't know Sammy. He never met him, so he didn't have a personal relationship with him in any way. But what he did, on the street was no good. So Gotti was not an easy guy to get along with. He was a narcissistic type of guy. I got along with him when I had to. I had a couple of disputes with him. But he was a stand-up guy at the end of the day. I mean, he went to jail. He didn't talk about anybody, and that was it. And on the street, that matters. That matters. So that's why I made that comment. You know, it strictly pertained to that. But look, I got to know Sammy now. It's a different story. And he had his reasons for doing that. I'm not going to judge it anymore. And, you know, he's trying to turn his life around. I see how he is with his family. He's great. So, you know, who am I to judge? You know, look, we were all on the street. We all did the things that we did. Maybe some guy did a little bit more than another guy, but we're all guilty of that. And, you know, I've come to that, you know, conclusion and realization. So I don't want to talk about anybody. Sammy and I are different. We have a different, you know, way of looking at all of this. And I think it came out, you know, in the sit-down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
time.
Michael, prior to the sit-down that you did with Patrick and Gerard and obviously with Sammy, how many times had you met Sammy in person? And how many times have you met Gotti in person prior to the sit-down?
Well, I met Gotti several more times than Sammy, you know, back in the day. We met Sammy one time.
That's it?
That was it.
So this was your second time meeting Sammy
That was it.
in your entire life?
Sammy,
Wow.
was Sammy straight up feared, like he would sit there? Was he a dialogue guy, or was he a guy that would just sit there, focus on you and watch every move and extremely paranoid, skeptical? What was Sammy known for back in the days, not today?
You know,
Sammy's got a sense of humor. He's very charming.
Yeah, absolutely. He's
Yeah.
great storyteller.
Very.
He's engaging to be
Very.
around. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I enjoyed the time we spent. We spent several hours together. I went out to Arizona to see him, and we spent several hours together. You know, look, he had a reputation on the street, no doubt about it, and we heard things about him. Again, it wasn't my personal involvement with him. But I don't want to get into all of that now because we do get into it when we sit down.
I think that's fair. So let's talk about, you brought up your dad, Sonny. You and I met with him multiple times.
Yes.
We went to New York and we were trying to do something with him. And one time we had the whole crew there. We were at the not hospital. I don't know what you would call that.
It was the Veterans Hospital.
Veterans
actually,
Hospital
yeah.
we were at, and talking to him. And so I'm driving him in the car, and we're going to this Italian restaurant. I don't know if you remember what the name of the Italian restaurant was. Yeah, so we go to this Italian restaurant. The lady's really nice who owns the shop. She's taking care of us, being good to us. And every time I ask your dad a question, hey, Sonny, what was it like? What was Lucky like? Fantastic guy. Mm-hmm. He's a great guy, great family guy. I'm like, Sonny, Lucky's got a history. Great guy, was always respectful. How about Meyer? They said he was a billionaire. What do you think? Was he that kind of a guy? He had money? I have no idea, but great guy. Phenomenal guy. So I said, how about Ben Siegel? How was Ben? Another great guy. So I said, Sammy, so all the movies are Sonny, all the movies are lying? These are great people that I dealt with. I said, Sonny, why don't we do the interview so you tell the world who you were rather than the world telling everybody who you were? I don't want to do that. Why don't you want to do that? So one time I went there, you weren't there, your sister was there. Mm-hmm. They were upset. You know, she was upset. She was like, you know, because, you know, I think I had like 2 or 3 meetings. Mario was there. Mario pulls up. His dad looks at Mario, is like, who are you? Mario says, and by the way, at 101 when we first met him, presence like a man you've never.
101?
He died at 103, just so
Wow.
you know that.
So that's why you look so good at 70. You're
Good
going to
genes.
go to 100 easy.
Adam,
Good genes.
his presence, unreal at 101. So he goes like this to Mario. Who are you? Mario says, I'm here with Patrick. He says, you a rat? Mario's
101 years old.
He's asking Mario.
Sonny Franzese.
So Mario's like, no,
sir.
I'm not a rat. I'm not a rat. He says, you sure? He says, yeah. He says, you know, 95% of men out there are rats. He says, you going to rat on this guy? He's telling this to Mario.
Rat on you.
Yeah. So
First
at this
meeting.
point, at this point, it's getting very uncomfortable. Mario's getting uncomfortable. And
Mario's already changed his pants.
And then Mario's like, no, said Sonny, he's a great guy. He says, okay, Linda, come fix my hair. Come here, Linda, grab the comb. So the nurse comes and she starts fixing it. Said, why are you doing it that way? Go the other way. You know how I like it. You could tell the man's presence
Classic.
on how Sonny was.
You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I knew I was fortunate to meet a lot of guys at that time, you know, from Chin to Fat Tony to Castellano, Gotti. There was nobody like my dad. I mean it. And I'm not, I'm trying to be as objective as I possibly can. There was really nobody like him.
What was your dad like when he was, doing his thing?
Back in the day, he had, and that's why he became such a major target. I mean, what nobody really understands, if you're around that time, you knew. My dad was the John Gotti of his day before they had, social media and all this kind of stuff. He was the John Gotti.
The Cotton Club and stuff like that.
He became such a target of law enforcement. I mean, look, he's indicted 4 times in the 60s. Media like you wouldn't believe, front page all the time. And he was the guy. And it was his presence, He just had a presence about him back then. You walked into a room, you knew, he was there. That was it. All the focus went on him. You go to the I was with my dad. I'll never forget. We were in the Copacabana. I forget who was playing. I think it was Jimmy Roselli. Yeah, it was Jimmy Roselli. And Joe Colombo came in at that time. And my father had to tell the waiters to take care of Joe Colombo because everybody was catering to my father.
And the people that don't know, Joe Colombo
he was the boss.
Yeah.
And I saw him do that a couple of times where all the attention always went to him and somebody else came in the room. He said, hey, take care of that guy. You know who he is? Be respectful. He just commanded that kind of presence.
If you could summarize your father in 3 major words, is there any words that come to mind?
Charismatic, powerful, those 2 words, and loving. As a father, he was terrific. Never missed a baseball game of mine, wanted me to go to college. Just a good husband at that time to my mom. He was just in the house. He was great.
He was born in what year? 1920?
He was born in 17.
1917.
He was born in Naples. My dad was born in. My grandfather came here. My grandfather came here several years earlier, but he would go back by boat every year to Naples. And my father was born on a boat trip. He was one of 19 kids, by the way.
One of 19?
19 kids.
No Facebook. No YouTube. No
Yeah.
Netflix.
Yeah, nothing else to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
You got nothing else
You're
to
saying there
do.
was no Facebook in
Yeah.
1919?
That was one of the
No.
crazy parts about the interview, frankly, man, was watching 2 men actually sit there, have a conversation, not look at their phone for 16 straight hours.
You see, and that's the thing. After being with my dad, and he taught me a lot. He taught me how to navigate that life. I was never in awe of anybody else. I respected them, no doubt, but I never, Gotti to me was, all right, he tries to have that big presence. My father didn't have to try. He just was who he was. That was it.
Big difference.
Oh, yeah.
So there's nobody you were in awe of.
So if you enjoyed this little short segment from the podcast that we did, here's another short segment to watch. Or if you want to see the entire podcast, click over here. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.